Welcome to the Afternoon Constitutional, and if you're looking for it on iTunes, I believe the name of our theme song is called Compensating for Something. My name is Joe Thomas. We're here sponsored by Government Accountability and Oversight, LLC. Our favorite four-letter word is FOIA, and we will find out what's going on behind closed doors. We've got a very busy program, but I want to begin with a story that sort of is relative to that. It appears that social media has indeed been colluding with the president, because we now have an injunction telling the president and the administration to stop interfering with social media and going over to them and saying, hey, listen, stuff is disinformation. You better not air that or run it or let it be seen on your platforms. This program has lost episodes because of that. This program lost an entire episode with the great Dr. Paul Marik of the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance because this injunction to get the administration to stop doing something that just a few months ago was a conspiracy theory that was going on. Wow. That's a pretty fast turnaround. So like I said, this is the stuff that we at the Government Accountability and Oversight Group look into. We're the people who found the EPA administrator working with the Green Agenda profiteers to craft environmental policy for the United States and such like that. We're founded by folks who are best-selling authors, the Power Grab, Politically Incorrect Guide to Global Warming, that kind of thing. Help us out with whatever you can at govoversight.org. Joining us to kick off this week is joining us from the, now I don't understand what happened. Where did CeCe go? We had CeCe there, and now the camera is off. So let me make sure that because I can see her in Zoom. CeCe, I hope I can hear you. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Now I just need to see you because I can see you on the Zoom meeting, and I've just got to probably figure it out somewhere along the line. Now, CeCe is joining us from the Southeastern. The Southeastern Legal Foundation, correct, CeCe? Is that the Southeastern Legal Foundation? And we've got your picture now, and that's much better than looking at me anyway. Now, if I understand that you were, and please, not a lawyer, never spend any time at the Holiday Inn Express, but I'm surrounded by lawyers. So I understand that you were involved, your organization, Southeastern Legal Foundation, was amicus to the filings in the Supreme Court that led to the affirmative action ruling. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. We filed some amicus briefs or friend of the court briefs in support of Students for Fair Admissions during their very lengthy court battle. They filed back in 2014 and finally just last Friday had a big victory up at the Supreme Court.
So then take us into, because we're hearing the hair on fire, rhetoric about how this is going to set back American life 100 years, and we might as well just close all our universities and everything. And simply put, and I want to ask you about this because it seemed like Justice Roberts' ruling seemed to leave, to me, a fairly big loophole for still allowing for racially based admissions in the form of essays and things like that. But first and foremost, address the whole rhetoric about how this is just going to set back race relations 100 years in this country.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to go back to where we were 100 years ago in terms of race relations. If you think about it, this is actually a major step forward, and it's putting us back to where we should have begun, which is with our Equal Protection Clause, with our nation's founding documents that enshrine the principle of equality, that say you cannot consider the color of someone's skin anytime they are applying for a benefit with the government. Mm-hmm. So especially at colleges and universities, it's kind of insane that they have gotten away for 50 years now with looking at the color of applicants' skin during the admissions process, when that is not allowed, it is not okay, it is not constitutional in any other kind of government program. So no, this isn't undoing any sort of good history that we have. It is preserving our good history. It is preserving our nation's founding principles.
So let's talk about the loophole that I'm concerned with, or maybe you're not concerned, where Justice Roberts said certainly a student's life history is more important than their racial background, but in the way it's been interpreted by several lawyers that I've talked to, is that's basically saying, so instead of saying, hey, 20% of our applicants have to be of this race, tell us about your experience fighting racism. And so it will still kind of sneak in the back door of that. CeCe, is that a concern?
Look, it's no secret that colleges are not perfect and their admissions process will not be perfect, right? There is still some room and some work to be done. But what this comes down to is it's putting us back on track to being a merits-based system where we are looking at what people have to offer, their achievements, their diversity of viewpoints that they can bring to the university. Colleges are supposed to be the marketplace of ideas that accept all different points of view, that have students from different backgrounds and different walks of life. And so hopefully the admissions process will respect that more and will put us closer to that ideal, because through the essay process, students can now talk about things that really matter to them. And hopefully it will create a more diverse student body.
So when you talk about the struggles that somebody may have found in their growing up, maybe a poor community, that kind of thing, you think this is going to be used with good relevance to a student that has fought hard, perhaps single mom, bad family situation, that kind of thing?
Absolutely, and I think it was Justice Thomas who wrote in his concurring opinion, if you compare a white student from Appalachia to a Black student who is a billionaire's son, which student maybe deserves a shot at college? I think most people would agree, probably the white student from Appalachia who had to overcome a lot to get into school. So that's why we shouldn't be looking at race at all in the admissions process. It really should be about what people had to overcome to get into college and what they can bring to the table once they are on campus.
So we just got a report that's showing that our academic achievement in K to 12 is falling way behind. I mean, it's the lowest numbers in years. So debating a merit-based educational admissions system seems like cart horse, who's placed in the right place. Do we also need to be looking at what we're preparing our children for through public school, especially through K to 12?
Yeah, it's never too early to start becoming involved in your child's schooling and keeping track of what your child is learning and holding your schools accountable. Like I said earlier, colleges certainly aren't perfect. K through 12 schools aren't perfect. They are an arm of the government. They are not your child's first educator, nor should they be. So it's certainly important to improve the school system throughout K through 12 and college, and it definitely begins in the home.
So when we look at where this affirmative action ruling is going to take place, a lot of the colleges we're flagged out of a little town known as Charlottesville, Virginia. We have a university nearby. Some people have heard of it. And they all seem to jump in and say, hey, we're already good with that. We're already good with that. What is your feeling, CeCe, regarding what is going to come next in admissions in our higher educational institutions?
Yeah, I think colleges have their work cut out for them because I think a lot of them have been doing this race-based admissions process, even if they deny that they did. But I think this ruling is really going to be a powerful tool for people to hold their universities accountable. We are going to demand more transparency from universities. We want to see exactly what they're doing with their admissions process. And like I mentioned, this is really an opportunity for colleges to once again become the marketplace of ideas that they're supposed to be. So colleges have been preaching that they are all about diversity. That's why they've been doing these race-based admissions policies for so long. It's time for them to actually practice what they preach and to look at students beyond the color of their skin and admit students based on merit. So hopefully this will be a step in the right direction, not just in terms of race and the Equal Protection Clause, but also in terms of the First Amendment and diversity of thought and getting students to come together and hear each other and listen to each other and share their alternative viewpoints with one another.
I was reading an article that I found on your website. It's slfliberty.org. Regarding, I guess it's the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee has already tweaked or altered its admission standards based on this ruling?
At the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, they had a bias reporting system, which several universities have, and it's certainly the result of admissions policies like this, where you are looking at the race of your students the minute they set foot on campus, and you teach students to obsess over race throughout their 4 years. So at UWM, they had what's called this bias reporting system, where students were encouraged to report each other anytime their feelings were hurt, they felt marginalized, they felt that their race was being stereotyped or discriminated against, and administrators would step in and investigate these reports. And what that does is it creates what we call a chilling effect on campus, where students are scared into silence. Rather than risk being reported for saying something quote unquote offensive or racist, they will just self-censor and not say anything at all. So we can definitely see the implications of these unconstitutional affirmative action policies that have trickled down. And hopefully with the SFFA ruling this past week, we will see those bias reporting systems start to disappear as well.
CeCe O'Leary is on with us from the Southeastern Legal Foundation. CeCe, about a year and a half ago, the University of Virginia here again in Charlottesville opened a cultural diversity center. And then I don't even think the off-gassing had finished in the carpeting when a viral video hit social media of a black student hollering at some white students to get out of their place on grounds here. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, is that this is actually making more racism than it is less racism at the end of the day.
Absolutely. That's actually an incident that we covered in our amicus brief. And there are similar incidents that have happened on campuses across the country where students are saying, we want our segregated safe space that is only open to students of this certain color or that certain color, and no other student is allowed inside of these four walls. We're seeing it with graduation ceremonies. Columbia University famously hosted, I think, 7 to 9 different graduation ceremonies last year, and other schools have followed. And these are examples that we bring to the Supreme Court's attention so that they know exactly what is going on college campuses.
Yeah, I saw a story that Stanford University had, and I'm quoting the Stanford, I guess, registrar's office, a blacks-only graduation. And I cannot believe that in 2023 we're back using expressions like, this is the blacks-only cafeteria, this is the blacks-only graduation. It's stunning how quickly this is backslid.
Absolutely. And I think it's directly the result of these affirmative action policies. You have Harvard, or had Harvard, recruiting students based on skin color back when they were in high school. They were recruiting Black and Latin American students rather than Asian American students, and inviting them to apply to the university. And then once they applied, throughout the admissions process, they were considering how their race, the race of the class, was shaping up. They would admit 18% of Asian American students, 11% of Black students, 10% Latin American students, and they wanted to keep those numbers the same every single year. Well, if you're obsessing over race that early in the admissions process, of course you're going to teach your employees and your students to obsess over race on the college campus as well.
Well, and certainly, and I made this point as the ruling came down last week, CeCe, that spend half the time and treasure on helping these kids make the standards as they originally stood would be a much more holistic approach. I mean, if Harvard wants a more diverse series of numbers in their spreadsheet, well, go into the inner city schools and take some of your endowments and start, lab schools and target programs to help these kids overcome what may already be challenges, rather than just saying we're going to arbitrarily create a number. Am I just tilting at windmills, thinking that universities could have done it that way rather than just counting on a law from the government to mandate it?
No, that's exactly what the Supreme Court has held too. Universities have to come up with race-neutral alternatives in the admissions process. They can't look at the color of someone's skin, but they can go into inner city schools and try to recruit students who have, who have had a tougher life or a tougher background and have had to overcome more to get into college. Those are race-neutral alternatives. It's when you are looking at the color of someone's skin and making a judgment call about them that violates the Constitution, and it's really a form of stereotyping. It assumes that everybody of a certain race thinks a certain way, acts a certain way, believes the same thing, and therefore you need people of that race on your campus to lend that viewpoint. It's stereotypical, and the Supreme Court held that that is not okay.
So we've seen this, and I think it's because my industry, we reward the glib sound bites with more airtime, I think, than they deserve a learned, thoughtful approach or an answer to a question. And so when, for example, Vice President Biden talks about Jim Crow 2.0, or we see, I was reading another story from your website about students heckling other students. Later on, we're going to have Moms for Liberty on, and the dozen or so people that protested outside of their event, somehow under this idea that they were going to ban homosexuality because Mike Pence or Donald Trump talked to them. This kind of all or nothing, 1 or 0 dialect, it just seems to, well, it's wearisome to me. I don't know if it's wearisome to you. I enjoy a good conversation where somebody might disagree with me, but I think it's actually killing academia, don't you?
Yeah, we work very closely with college students through our 1A project, which is really focused on teaching them about their First Amendment rights. And it's really concerning that, number one, a lot of students aren't taught what their rights are to begin with. And number two, they're not taught to think critically. They just assume that what they are told by their professors, by their administrators, by the news, that it's the truth and it's the law of the land. So there definitely is still an uphill battle to kind of convince students to advocate for themselves and really to get professors to teach critical thinking again. But there's certainly hope. We work with a lot of really wonderful students across the country who do, crave this kind of learning. And so there's definitely hope for our country still.
Well, I was going to that because I really want something to be hopeful about this, because I've coined a phrase on my radio show, crimeless victims. You've heard the expression victimless crime. I think what we're seeing is a mounting number of protests by what I call crimeless victims, and it seems to garner inordinate amount of camera time. I've said without any real evidence, it just seems like 5% of the population is getting 95% of the media coverage. So give us that, talk about the people who really want to not just learn the law to use it as a weapon, but to learn the law to help people, to defend people, to help make sure they keep their rights, not to try to imagineer some new batch of rights, CeCe.
Yeah, that's kind of the goal of what we do. We are here to educate the public about their rights, and give them the law, like you said, both as a weapon, as a sword, and as a shield. Not to invent new outlandish laws, but to just preserve the laws that we have, our natural rights, and protect them from government overreach. So there are a lot of wonderful parents and students in particular who we work with across the country who are taking back their schools. They are fighting for their own rights, their children's rights. They want to learn more. They are running for school board. And once they get on school board, they want to preserve the law and not be, bureaucrats who are encroaching too far. So there are some really great people out there who are part of this fight, and we are happy to be a part of it and to educate them and support them in any way that we can.
And it sounds like you like my organization, the Government Accountability and Oversight, really, look for those hidey holes. And is it your experience, CeCe, that the longer a law is, the more pages a law is, the more little hiding places, the real intent of the law, or the crippling intent that may be manufactured later, tends to grow?
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair to say. Stuff often gets snuck into different bills and things like that. So it's important to just keep our guards up, and especially with federal regulations and the fourth arm of the government, the fourth branch of the government, the administrative state.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't hurt to just kind of have your guard up and know what your constitutional rights are.
Well, and I was speaking about this. I was asked to speak on Independence Day, and I was talking about Magna Carta, really. I just spent all of Independence Day not talking about the Declaration of Independence, but that it was really a lawsuit filed under Magna Carta, ostensibly suing for our independence or our self-governance. But nowadays, what it seems like is we have folks that go in and say, okay, here's what we need to do. Let's get some laws on the books, and then in a few years, we'll be able to do what we want to do. And they're thinking steps ahead. I think in certain cases, even some of the COVID-19 voting rules and things like that, we're like, all right, here's what we want to do. Let's find a law that we can write when nobody's looking, in some committee nobody's watching. And then when we do it, we say, hey, it's legal. It's in the law book. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I worry about. People are losing faith in the justice system because they're finding that the laws have been written almost to counter purposes to them. CeCe, is that some of the stuff you're working on as well?
Yeah, and I think I would just say to that affirmative action was around for 50 years, and plenty of people never thought it would go away. They didn't think we could get rid of it, and here we are. It's been struck down. Same with, the major ruling striking down Roe v. Wade last summer. So the law is certainly this kind of behemoth that scares people sometimes. But with our Constitution, with our constitutional rights and freedoms, we can overcome even the scariest seeming laws and the ones that have been entrenched for many, many years with dozens of pages on the books. We can still overcome it.
Well, I always like to point out to people that the first 10 sections of the Bill of Rights barely crest 2 sentences in length, yet they've stood up for 200 plus years. CeCe, so what are you guys working on at the Southeastern Legal Foundation that we can watch for in the coming months? What are you preparing for the next Supreme Court session?
Yeah, we have some cases on appeal right now, one at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. We are challenging an anti-racism training that every single employee had to participate in Springfield, Missouri, where they had to go and basically commit to becoming anti-racist. It was a violation of their First Amendment rights. They were compelled to speak. And so that's up before the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals and is something that we will be, working on very hard for the next few months, and we encourage people to follow along and keep up with that case.
And what about the one we were talking about just before we came on, the one that just came down on Independence Day regarding the social media and apparently, an injunction stopping the government, the federal executive branch, from doing what they had for months denied was even going on. Can't imagine why you would need an injunction to stop something from what's going on, where they were going in and basically telling the social media platforms who to promote, who to denigrate, who to throttle back their feeds. We've had episodes of this program taken down. Is this something you're watching coming through? I guess it's the Fifth Circuit.
Yeah, we're definitely keeping an eye on it, as we do with all major federal lawsuits and cases. And this is a major interest for groups like ours who do a lot of transparency work. And I know you mentioned that you do transparency work as well. It's always important to kind of keep an eye on what's going on in the government and file FOIA requests, open records requests. And so we do a lot of work with that, both at the local level, sending FOIA requests to school boards, all the way up to the highest levels of the Biden administration.
And I think it's important to remind folks that FOIA is not just for lawyers and broadcasters and reporters. I mean, anyone can file a FOIA request. If you feel like your school board is doing something not quite on the up and up, it certainly helps to have a lawyer looking over it, because you don't want to ask for something that, or get something that you misinterpret. But anyone can file a FOIA request, can't they? And try to keep the smallest of governments in line.
That's right. There are a couple of states that require you to be a resident of that state in order to file an open records request there. I know Tennessee is one of them. But for the most part, anybody can submit a FOIA request to any government entity at any time, and it's a really powerful weapon that we have at our disposal. And so, like you said, it's not just for lawyers to use, it's for the American public to use.
One of our areas here in our flagship area, Charlottesville, has actually asked the General Assembly to give them permission to limit the access of Freedom of Information Act filings, claiming that they're a nuisance. Is this a dangerous thing that we need to be making sure our legislators are pushing back on? Because they'll turn around and say, "Oh my gosh, all day we're getting these FOIA requests, these nuisance laws." One of my own coworkers has been accused of filing nuisance FOIA requests. That's a dangerous thing for governments to be talking about, isn't it, CeCe?
I think anytime the government says that something is going to be too hard or demand too much work of it, you're right over the target. It's definitely concerning when the government doesn't want to work, although I think we're kind of used to that by now.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope your summer is setting up well. It sounds like you guys are quite busy there at Southeastern Liberty Foundation. The website's right there on the screen, slfliberty.org. CeCe O'Leary, thank you so much for taking your time out, and you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you. Now, this past weekend, there was quite an event going on, and it involved Moms for Liberty. Moms for Liberty, of course, we've had Kimberly Fletcher and Tiffany and so many of the folks from Moms for Liberty on in the past. And Kimberly Fletcher is coming up. We have some imagery from that. You can see the crowd inside at the Moms for Liberty National Summit. Their national summit went on in Philadelphia. It's Tiffany and some of the folks that founded the organization Moms for Liberty, and it was well attended because there were people like Nikki Haley who were there, and so a bunch of presidential candidates. Because, to be fair, we were based here in Virginia, and they watched what Glenn Youngkin did to win the governor's mansion. And the Moms movement continues. There's Ron DeSantis during his speech to the National Summit, Moms for Liberty in Philadelphia. But you see the increase. And what's amazing to me, so here's the protesters outside. It's a couple of dozen folks there who apparently think that moms want to ban gayness. There's, of course, the gentleman that draws most of the folks' ire is Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States. He was at the Moms for Liberty event. But when you see how, just like Terry McAuliffe, these politicians continue to denigrate the moms movement, to say parents have no say. They'll even use horrific events like the shooting of Abby Zwerner in Hampton Roads and say, see, Joe, that's why parents shouldn't have any rights, because my gosh, that mom, she was a drug user and she lied on her gun application just like Hunter Biden did. Allegedly, I don't want to get in trouble with former Virginia 5th District Congressman Denver Riggleman, who is now taking on the case. After finding Bigfoot, he is now going to find Hunter Biden's innocence as well. It'll probably be about as difficult a search there as well. But the moms movement is fascinating to me because they continue to be denigrated. They continue to be marginalized. They continue to be a group that is just resoundingly dismissed by those in position of office. And that's what stuns me. And it stunned me when Terry McAuliffe did it. It stunned me when Terry McAuliffe did it because I didn't, for a moment, I thought he was wrong on an awful lot of things, but I never thought he was a dumb person. He's the one who realized, hey, we could rent out the Lincoln bedroom. And maybe, that. So, he's not unintelligent. But he was so caught up in, I have to be on the side of the teachers that I have to be against parents. And you saw what it did to him. And what's amazing to me is not only did he not learn, because there was plenty of time after Terry McAuliffe made his statements about moms for him to correct course and say, wow, I hit my head. It was concussion protocols. Who knows? But I was wrong. Moms, you are absolutely number one and Mama Bear. I mean, I don't even know if he slept in the same room with Mrs. McAuliffe at that point. I mean, I can't imagine she would be sitting there saying, maybe this pillow would smother him nicely. I don't know. But the issues of whether or not moms should have a say or not, continues to be a question. And we're waiting the arrival of Kimberly Fletcher. I'm told that she's in a meeting, and I'm going to go try to find that meeting and bring her into it because she's somewhere, and I don't want her to hang up and go away if we don't come to her fast. So hang on, take a look at some of the scenes from the Moms for Liberty event. We'll be right back. And we have found her. It's the wonders of technology, as my son likes to say. It's called First World Problems, Dad. Joining us now from Moms for Liberty, and she is the great Kimberly Fletcher, and I appreciate it. Kimberly, thank you so much for taking some time out with us. How are you doing? You guys must be exhausted after this past weekend.
Well, I am absolutely fantastic. We are Moms for America. Work with Moms for Liberty all the time, and we just think that they're doing an amazing job. There are a lot of things that we do together on the ground and in the public square. But we are actually focused heavily on getting our FCC standard bill passed, making sure that we have good candidates and from school board to Congress and all kinds of great things like that. So we love working with them.
Well, I was saying before we got started, Kimberly, that it's just stunning to me that the moms movement in general is still falling on so many tone deaf ears. And it was just as amazing as it was when I first watched Terry McAuliffe, who I don't count as an unintelligent person, sit there and ignore the obvious hemorrhaging that his political future was doing. It was laying on the ground, just bleeding out, and he couldn't see it or wouldn't see it there. And yet, as the 2 years now have gone on since, it's gotten, in my mind, worse, Kimberly. I mean, isn't it stunning to you?
It is absolutely. And I think they've gotten to the point where they feel like they are untouchable, that they have gained so much ground that we have no way to fight back. But I will tell you that they've really made a real big mistake when they decided to stand between a mother and her child. That is not a good place to be. And moms are rising up all over. And this is a mom-led revolution. And we are not going to allow the government to be in place of us of we as parents. We are the ones who are the teachers, the nurturers, the protectors of these children. And we are not going to let the government get in between us and our child.
So when we look at what's going on, I want to talk about your FCC work, as well as working on getting good candidates all the way down ticket, Kimberly, because that's going to be so important. Is in the local elections. We have Virginia elections coming up this November as well. But there's also the danger of a little of what I saw, which seemed like the Moms for Liberty event turned into almost a campaign rally where the focus group politicians are coming in saying, okay, here's the things to say to moms. And it doesn't resonate, or it leaves one feeling a little bit like, okay, we used to hear this from the other political party. You've got to be judicious about what you're listening to. I mean, you guys didn't wrap a truck in purple and send it off in a convoy for nothing.
Absolutely. No, so it goes beyond the elections on the national level. And while a presidential election is important, it shouldn't be near as infiltrating, I guess, in our lives as close up as it is. But because of Barack Obama and those who are still leading this regime, I guess, if you want to call it, their goal is to destroy the republic. That is what it's about. They want to shred the Constitution, destroy the republic, and mothers are in the way, parents are in the way of having their complete dream fulfilled of creating a communist utopia where they are the ones in charge and the rest of us suffer. And I'm not going to allow that to happen. That's why we wrapped the bus. That's why we are doing the FCC standard bill. That's why we're working on elections. But the truth of the matter is, if you focus on the school board and the sheriff, you own the county. And we can build from there. And so those local elections.
I'm sorry, you cut out there. Did we lose Kim? I hope not. I think her connection may have gone. She's frozen a little bit there. So let's see if we can't get Kim back here in a moment here on the afternoon constitutional here. Let me see about where her video is, and is there a reboot button here? And let me just I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to restart it or not, but we're going to try our best to do that.
Or whatever.
Oh, there she is. I think we kick-started her audio there. We had lost her audio there for a moment. Kimberly, we lost you there. You froze.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
No. It's okay. It wasn't an unflattering pose, which is always what happens to me when my screen freezes. I'm like, and I look like I'm about to have some sort of medical procedure. So we were talking about the down ticket races and the sheriffs and the school boards. School boards, so important when you look at the degrading and depressing things that our children are being told. That's really the core of where Moms for America is looking at, is making sure these school board elections have advocates for moms on them.
Absolutely. And you don't have to be a mom to run, but we're certainly going to help you if you want to. But we will also help you know how to help those candidates who are running that are going to stand for those parental rights, those good values, putting students first instead of the adults. It's one of the reasons why we did do the FCC standard bill, because we have been flipping school boards and school board seats in many states and school districts, which has been amazing. But what we're hearing is they're telling us, okay, but what do we do? Mm-hmm. We provide training for the school board members once they're on there to help them and empower them. But they're looking for resources, and so are parents, to protect their children. So I met with John Rich in January of this year, and he was talking to me about this idea of the FCC standard. If you can't show it on TV and you can't air it on the radio, you can't have it in the classroom. Makes perfect sense, right? Mm-hmm. So he tried to pass the bill in Tennessee. It didn't quite get over the line. I said, John, I only take this to Texas because Texas is in legislative session this year. It's an off year, and I got plenty of time to focus on it.
And it's Texas.
And so we did. And it's Texas. And so go big or go home. So we did. We took it to Texas, and the whole entire idea and the concept of the FCC standard. We looked at all the bills, the obscenity bills that were being put forth. And Jared Patterson had a great bill, HB 900, which he labeled the Reader Act. We adopted that as our FCC standard bill to push and promote. It went through the House. It went through the Senate. There are many obstacles, but we still got it through, and the governor signed it on June 12th. It is now law in the state of Texas. We have 8 other states who are introducing it. Louisiana has passed it through both houses, and it's sitting on the governor's desk, and we are taking it to Congress. So this is something that we finally have a tool, a weapon, if you will, to fight against the evil that's coming against our children. Because if you take away that protection of the word education, because that's what they put it all under, it's educational, that's absurd. If we cannot show these things on television and we cannot air them on the radio because we want to protect children from this content, why are we allowing it in the schools and the classrooms? Exactly. It's a winning argument, and 10 Democrats signed on to it.
And we've seen it even in the Virginia House of Delegates years ago, when this issue really started to manifest. One of our state senators read a passage from one of the school books and was gavelled down because the pages, who were some of the brightest middle school and early high school students in Virginia, were in the room, and they could hear what he was reading. He said, this is from a textbook. And right. These are the things that we have to rein in and get a hold of. And we were talking about this in the first half of the show. This shouting down, this debating style where we're just going to call you a name. Once the name is stuck, we can dismiss you as an insurrectionist, or in this case, a book banner. Talk about how moms and dads fight back against this, this labeling, this name calling that is supposed to marginalize them.
Well, and they've also listed us, both Moms for America and Moms for Liberty, on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate group. So they think that, okay, well, we can label them as that. We can label them as transphobic, or, they come up with all of these different names. So this is what I tell people all the time. The truth is on our side, and we know this, and the truth always wins. And we just have to keep speaking it. And we have to keep telling the stories. And that's one of the things that we've been able to do. Is we provide this national platform where we can tell the stories of what these moms and these parents are being faced with. If we don't tell the stories, then it's not documented, and it didn't happen. And there's still so many people out there that say, well, it's not really that bad, or it's not really happening. Right. It is. We need to keep reading the books that our children are being exposed to. We need to keep telling the stories about our children who are coming home thinking, went to school thinking knowing they were a boy, and coming home wondering if they were a girl, and vice versa. I mean, it's ridiculous. We just want to get back to real science, true history, civics, those things, that classical liberal arts education that made people great no matter what they
Yep.
decided to do with their lives. But
Agreed.
they don't want to do that.
Why? And there's a wonderful expression. It is make 1984 fiction again. But I'm worried that we need a new one. It's make Brave New World fiction again, because this strikes me of the creation of this dystopian world in Aldous Huxley's book, where children were taken from parents and raised by the government. The parents were given their mind-altering chemicals and told to just be happy with the things that you have. And it's dangerous, because it really is. When I listen to some of the folks who are talking about the things they want to teach in schools, I mean, it really strikes me that that's where we're going in this. Is that this is about erasing what the parents may have learned when they grew up and inserting something wholly different at the behest of the government. And who knows what is going to happen after that, Kimberly?
Yeah, absolutely. And we entrusted our children to these schools, and now we realize that we can't trust them anymore. We put them into the hands of the enemy. And the thing is, we have this mama bear training that we take across the country, and it's like an hour and a half in an evening, but it's an eye-opening experience, so we can help these parents understand what it is that we're actually facing. Because the truth of the matter is, we are right now living in Mao's China, Hitler's Germany, and Stalin's Russia. And when they realize that, they're like, oh my gosh, this is bigger than we ever thought. I'm like, yeah, the whole entire objective here is to completely dismantle the republic and to kill God. That's it. That is the objective. And they're weaponizing our children to do it. If you want to take over a country, every despot knows this. All the worst, horrible dictators in the world through history have known that if you want to win the future, you start with the children, because they will be the future. Yeah. And that is exactly what's happening. And you just sit back and you go, how is it possible that people would purposely want to hurt children? It is $1 billion business to mutilate children. Oh, $1 billion business. And I'm like, how are we allowing this? When you are saying that we're going to take your children away from you because you're abusing them, but the government is allowed to abuse them. The school system is allowed to take our children and put them into a system to allow them to transition chemically, physically. I mean, the suicide rate, when they keep talking about the suicide rate, your child will die if he's a boy, but he may live if he's a girl, is poppycock. The truth of the matter is that the suicide rate has increased amongst the transgender community after they're transgender.
Right.
And we've got these kids who are just lost, and we need to stand up and start fighting for them. That's what we need to stand on. Forget about the names they're calling you. Forget about the attacks. Forget about all the things that they said about Moms for Liberty over the weekend. It's their lies. We have the truth. The truth is on our side, and we need to keep speaking it, because just as Hans Christian Andersen said, the emperor is naked, and it's time that people stand up and start saying it.
You mentioned so many points in there, and we go back to some of the earliest folks who did gender reassignment surgery in Baltimore, and the hospital stopped doing it after 10 years when they realized there were suicides amongst the people they helped transition, and the depressions and the other issues that were befalling them hadn't changed at all. And yet when you suggest that we help or we intercede for the self-loathing, the self-dislike that is driving some of the gender dysphoria discussion, you're called a homophobe. You're called a denier. You're threatened with having kids taken away from you. What do you say? And I know you talked about your mama bear training, Kimberly. Talk about, for a mom or a dad who brings this up to their kids, and then the kids say, "Oh, but I know, I get it, but all my friends, and I don't want to be unpopular, and they're gonna, and I'm gonna get lower grades, and all the things that the pressures that really befall a high school kid." Talk about how moms can navigate that minefield.
Well, I really wish that that moms would realize just how powerful their influence is. And the thing that they need to know is you've got to be at the crossroads of your children's lives. You've got to be at least as much as an influence as the world is, because the world is trying to steal your child. And you need to not hide your head under the pillow and think that everything's okay. It's not my school. It's not my teachers. It's everywhere. Every school district where there is a teachers union, this is happening, and every school district has a teachers union. This is about stealing the hearts and minds of our children. So we have got to help our children find purpose and passion. Talk to your kids, find out what they're interested in. Start filling that empty void. That's a great film that came out just a little while ago, and I hope everybody would go see it, Jesus Revolution. And there's a part in the book where it says, when he's talking, this hippie pastor, and he's talking about who his people are, and he said they are a lost lot. They're searching for all the right things in all the wrong places. And that's what it's happening with our kids today. Everything that's given them purpose and passion, the fact that they're children of God, that they are part of a family, that they're citizens of this great country, it's all been stripped away from them. And they're being taught to hate their country, hate their neighbor, hate themselves, and completely disregard their parents. We are the ones who have the ability to turn that around. We've got to have a relationship with our kids. And yes, if they say, but everybody's doing it and I don't want to let that person out, teach them, share them the stories of courageous people who stood against all obstacles, people who stood in revolution just to fight for what we have today, people who continue to stand in countries across the world. So many great stories of people who stood up and did the right thing. That's what changes kids' hearts and minds. That's what gives them the courage to fight the battles that they face. But we also need to let them know we're fighting this together. You're not alone. Turn on your phone, report it, bring it home. We'll fight it. And Moms for America's got a platform to get it out on the national stage.
I know you do, and I wanted to head into there, but also, to tap into, the natural, and I believe most kids have an innate empathy, and if they know somebody is hurting, rather than just allow them to unicize themselves, help them through that, because I worry that there's subtext to this where we're creating a generation of eunuchs who are not going to be moms because it's not possible for them to be, and I don't know what happens to that. I don't have any evidence to the connection with the population control movement, but it sure seems like if we can get an entire generation of kids to turn themselves into eunuchs, that's going to help the population bomb that Paul Ehrlich told us about, Kim. Wrapping up, so what is, you mentioned the FCC. Where is that? Is that catching on in other places besides Texas now?
It absolutely is. I was on the Glenn Beck show last Friday, and I had barely gotten off the show when I got texts and emails from 6 different legislators in 4 different states who said, we want to do this. And we've already introduced it in 8 other states, and we are introducing it in Congress. And we're not asking Congress to make any laws because they have no authority over the school districts or the states. But the other side uses bribery and blackmail constantly to push their nefarious ideas. So we can incentivize those schools who adopt the FCC standard and penalize those who don't. And I think it's a common ground. Yep. It's a winning argument. We just have to make sure that the bill is right, because every state, the bill is going to be, a little bit different. We need to make sure it fits within the standard, and we need to consider unintended consequences to make sure we have a good, solid bill. And surprisingly, we are working on what we think is going to be the hybrid perfection in Virginia right now.
Oh, I love it. Oh, please let us know when we will get behind it. Kimberly Fletcher, Moms for America, and I think I know a couple of the folks you're working with it, so I won't give away your secret there, because we don't want to spoil it, because if they know about it, they'll try to get out in front of it and kill it before it goes. So please, join Moms for America, get with them and be part of the movement that, and the toolkits that help you fight back against the name calling, the book banners, and all the other things that they want to call you, because they'll pick on one, isolated story and say, see, that's why moms shouldn't have, whatever, and the role they have in their kids. And it's to our peril, because let's face it, if you really want to turn your kids over to the same people that run the DMV, right, Kim?
No, I really do not.
Yeah, I appreciate it so much, and thank you so much for your time. And again, what's coming up? Give us a little calendar of what's coming up with Moms for America as summertime gets settled in over us.
Well, we are actually traveling the Western states, meeting with moms, have different speaking engagements, doing our Mama Bear training, getting Moms for America group started, and they're exploding. It's just amazing to see these moms stand up. There's strength in numbers. That's the big takeaway. There's strength in numbers. Connect with those in your community and stand up and rise up and be a powerful force for good. That is what we're doing this summer across the country.
Well, thank you so much, and keep us tapped in on the legislation as the elections come closer in Virginia. Voting in Virginia starts on September 22nd, so we want to be able to lean on people and say, this might be something you want to look at coming in there and find out where they stand on it. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and have a wonderful remainder of the afternoon. Sorry for the bumpy start, and she was
all good.
she was in some alternate universe of Zoom there, and they had her wandering there. But I appreciate it as always, and thank you so much, and you have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You too, sir.
Hey, she called me sir. Now, what am I supposed to say to that? Thank you for watching and tuning in and sharing this, as always, with your friends in social media. Greg, thank you. He writes, those who denigrate or even just ignore these patriots are destined to be blindsided. At least I hope so. You and me both. So for all of us here at the Afternoon Constitutional, until tomorrow, so long, and thanks for all the fish.